Everybody like and subscribe, praise the bell icon. Story number 1.
There was a small town gym, one of those places where the smell of sweat and rubber mats lingered in the air and the flickering fluorescent lights hummed overhead. It was nothing fancy, but it was the only gym within 20 miles, so locals came religiously. Among them was a guy named Eric, a quiet type who mostly kept to himself. He had started going there late at night after work because the crowds were gone and he preferred the solitude. One night, as Eric was finishing his routine on the bench press, he noticed the old security camera in the corner of the room flicker and glitch. The monitor mounted near the entrance was static, but occasionally a shadowy figure would flash across the screen, someone tall, lanky, and oddly distorted. He shrugged it off, thinking it was just a technical glitch. But over the next few weeks, strange things escalated. The gym's atmosphere grew heavy. Machines would suddenly stop working. Weights that Eric swore he left in one spot would be found scattered across the floor. He'd hear heavy breathing behind him in the empty locker room, but whenever he turned around, no one was there. One night, Eric stayed later than usual, stretching on the mat near the mirrors. That's when he noticed something chilling. His reflection didn't move with him. It smiled, a slow, twisted grin that didn't match his own neutral face. Frozen in place, Eric blinked and looked away, convinced it was a trick of the light. But when he looked back, the reflection was gone. The gym door suddenly slammed shut, making Eric jump. The lights flickered violently and then went out, plunging the room into darkness. He fumbled for his phone to use as a flashlight, but the battery was dead. Panic settled in as he heard the clanging of metal weights dropping in the distance, like someone was throwing them around the weight rack. Then came the whispering. Barely audible at first, a chorus of breathy voices echoing off the walls, chanting unintelligible words. Eric's heart hammered as he tried to find the exit, but the gym seemed to warp around him, the rows of treadmills and ellipticals stretching farther than possible, turning into a maze. Suddenly, the overhead speaker crackled to life with a distorted voice repeating, "Stay, stay, stay." The gym equipment started moving on its own, treadmills speeding up, ropes swinging wildly, punching bags swinging like pendulums. Eric ran, but no matter how fast he moved, the exit always seemed just out of reach. In one corner, he glimpsed a figure standing by the dumbbells, a gaunt man in tattered gym clothes, face obscured by shadows. The figure's eyes glowed faint red as it watched Eric's every move. With nowhere left to go, Eric hid behind a row of lockers, heart pounding so loud it drowned out the whispers. Suddenly, the locker door beside him creaked open on its own. Inside was a small, cracked mirror, reflecting not Eric but the gaunt figure's face, leering close. The whispers grew louder, the temperature dropped, and Eric felt cold fingers brushing his neck. Summoning every ounce of courage, he bolted toward a faint light coming from the emergency exit. He smashed the door open and stumbled outside, gasping for air under the cold night sky. The next day, Eric didn't return to the gym. When he told friends about what happened, they exchanged uneasy glances. The gym had a dark history. Years ago, a trainer had disappeared without a trace during a late-night session. They said the gym was cursed, haunted by the restless spirit of that missing man. No one else ever reported what Eric did that night, but the cameras caught something disturbing. Footage showed the gym's empty interior, lights flickering, machines moving on their own. And then, for a brief moment, a shadowy figure standing motionless by the bench press. Its eyes seemed to follow the camera, burning with an unnatural hunger. The gym eventually shut down, but locals still whisper about it. Some swear they hear the clatter of weights and the faint sound of a gruff voice echoing in the dead of night near the abandoned building. And if you listen closely, you might hear a whisper, just barely audible over the wind. "Stay, stay, stay."
Story number 2.
Late one night, long after the gym had emptied and the fluorescent lights flickered unevenly overhead, a lone runner kept her pace steady on the treadmill. Emma was used to late-night workouts, quiet, empty spaces where she could push herself without distractions. But this night felt different. The air was heavier, thick with a coldness that no thermostat could explain. She glanced around. The gym's usual hum of machinery was oddly muted, like the building itself was holding its breath. The only sound was the rhythmic pounding of her feet against the belt. Her reflection in the mirror showed determination, but behind her, the dim corner near the weight rack seemed darker, like a shadow eating the light. Emma slowed down, sensing something off. Then she heard it, a faint scraping noise from the weight room. It was subtle, like metal scraping against metal, but enough to stop her heart for a moment. She convinced herself it was just the building settling, maybe a janitor cleaning late, though no one was supposed to be there. She stepped off the treadmill, wiping sweat from her brow, and decided to grab a bottle of water from the locker room. As she passed the weight racks, her eyes caught movement, just the corner of her vision. She turned sharply. Nothing. Just the dull clang of dumbbells resting on racks. When she reached the locker room, the lights flickered again, plunging everything into near darkness for a heartbeat. She fumbled for her phone to use its flashlight, the screen trembling in her hand. Then she heard it again, this time, unmistakably a whisper. Not loud, barely audible, but it came from the locker room adjacent to hers. She froze, straining to catch words, but all she heard was a chilling rasp, like breath brushing against skin. Her heart pounded in her ears. Emma debated calling someone, but her phone had no signal. She was alone. Suddenly, the lockers began to slam shut one by one, a metallic echo bouncing off the tiled walls. She spun around, searching for the source, but nothing was visible. Panic rising, she ran back to the main gym floor, only to find the treadmill she had been using moving on its own. The belt spun wildly, as if invisible feet were running furiously. The lights went out completely. When the emergency lights flickered on seconds later, the treadmill was still. Emma, trembling, saw dark, smeared handprints along the glass wall beside the machines, like someone had pressed their palms and dragged them down in desperation or rage. She grabbed her bag and ran out, the cold night air a sharp contrast to the suffocating atmosphere inside. Days later, she found out that years ago, a personal trainer at that gym had disappeared mysteriously during a night shift, last seen near the weight racks. His body was never found. Rumors whispered about someone obsessed with fitness, driven mad by the relentless pursuit of perfection, trapped inside the gym, forever running, lifting, chasing something no one could see. Emma never went back after that night. But sometimes, when she drives past the gym late at night, she sees the treadmill's belt moving slowly through the window, as if inviting her to join a workout she can never escape.
Story number 3.
The gym was supposed to be a place of transformation, where people pushed their limits and sculpted their bodies. For Mark, it was an escape from the weight of his daily life, a chance to reset. But after a few weeks at his new local gym, something about the place unsettled him in a way he couldn't explain. It started with the whispers. Late at night, when the gym was nearly empty, except for the staff cleaning and a few dedicated night owls, Mark would hear faint murmurs drifting from the weight room. No one was there, or so it seemed. The sound was soft, almost like a dozen voices speaking just beneath the edge of hearing, too low to understand, but persistent enough to prick his skin. One night after finishing his workout, Mark decided to stay and investigate. The lights were dim, some flickering sporadically, casting shadows that danced across the peeling walls. As he stepped toward the weight room, the whispers grew louder, more frantic, yet still indecipherable. The gym equipment creaked under invisible pressure, like someone or something was there. Mark's eyes caught movement near the squat rack. A shadow darted away, vanishing into the darker corner where the heavy bags hung. He called out, but his voice seemed to vanish into the stale air. Suddenly, the overhead lights flickered violently, then went out completely, plunging the room into darkness. His phone's flashlight barely pierced the blackness as he fumbled toward the exit. But the exit door was locked. Not just locked, it was sealed tight, as if the building itself refused to let him leave. The whispers swelled into agonized wails that echoed off the walls, now clearly voices of pain and despair. Mark's heart hammered against his ribs as he realized the gym wasn't just a building, it was a trap. Desperately, he swung his flashlight around and caught a glimpse of a figure, gaunt, impossibly thin, with eyes hollow and black, staring back at him from behind the weight machines. It moved closer, its limbs jerking unnaturally, like a puppet controlled by some malevolent force. Mark backed away until he was pressed against the cold metal of a dumbbell rack. The figure lunged, but at the last moment, the light snapped back on. The entity vanished, but the room felt colder, darker somehow. The next morning, when Mark told the staff what happened, they exchanged uneasy looks. The gym owner hesitated before explaining that years ago, a tragic accident had occurred during a midnight workout. A young man had collapsed from exhaustion, but no one found him until days later. His body was discovered near the same weight room, pale and twisted in a way no living person should be. Since then, employees reported strange sounds, sudden drops in temperature, and shadows that moved without source. Some night shift trainers refused to work alone. Mark never returned after that night. But sometimes, when the gym is empty and the building hums with silence, the whispers start again, an endless loop of pain and struggle, trapped within the cold iron and sweat-soaked floors. And if you listen closely, you might hear the faintest plea for release, drowned beneath the clatter of weights and the beat of a restless heartbeat that never found rest.